So this will be a series of 10 talks on the Paramis, and this is the Pali word for perfections. Paramis are perfections of the heart and mind that are cultivated in order to become liberated from those routine things that cause us suffering and to generate compassion in our response to ourselves and others. Paramis are simple to practice and can be passed on and taught to children. This was practiced in Asian Buddhist countries and perfected before lay people felt that they could then learn how to meditate, which is considered to be much more difficult than practicing the Paramis in daily life. In the Theravada Buddhist tradition, there are 10 Paramis or perfections. The first is dana, or act of generosity. The second is virtue or ethics. The third is nekama, or letting go. The fourth is panya, or wisdom. The fifth is viriya, or energy. The sixth is khanti, or patience. The seventh is satcha, or truthfulness. And the eighth is adhitthana, or determination. The ninth is metta, or loving kindness. And the 10th is upekkha, or equanimity. When lay people would ask the Buddha how to begin a spiritual path of practice, he taught them that the path began and ended with dana. So there are 5 steps that he advised, the first being to learn and practice the importance and benefits of generosity. The second is the practice of sila, or ethics. The third is practices of calmness and stabilizing the mind through concentration practice. The fourth is insight, or vipassana practice, which, when supported by a calm and stable mind, would then lead to awakening. Once awakened, the Buddha instructed that it was important to go out to be of service to others. Service is dana, or act of generosity. So therefore we can see that what he was showing lay people is that generosity comes full circle in any spiritual path of practice. So the definition of dana in the Buddhist tradition is the practice of giving or sharing with others. And in the Buddhist tradition, it means giving freely without expecting anything in return. The practice of generosity is an antidote to attachment, craving, or greed when we are really holding on to our things. It's an antidote to stinginess. As we practice letting go of our own selfish self-centeredness, our minds have spaciousness to open into loving kindness and compassion. The practice then becomes one of exploring what holds us back from being generous. If there is fear around letting go and giving, what are we afraid of? As we sit and reflect upon the blocks to generosity for each and every one of us, and opening up to these blocks, we will eventually find freedom from that which keeps us locked in to suffering. We will let go of the bondage and experience more life, freedom, and lightness. Let's try this exercise together. Clench your fist and imagine holding on to something without ever letting it go. So really, really tightly. Just clenching your fist. Feeling what that feels like in the body. And then finally letting go. So what was that like for you? The Buddha set it up during his teaching lifetime to have monastics be dependent on the lay village, and the lay village dependent on the monastics. And this is how it works even today. So the monastics have 4 requisites. First, the lay people offer food to them when they come down to the village with their alms bowls, and they eat once a day. They are not allowed to cook or grow their own food. Monastics are not allowed to handle any money or drive. The second requisite for monastics is that the lay people sew and provide them with their robes. The third is medicine when they're sick, and the last is shelter. Often the villagers build their monasteries. And in exchange for these 4 requisites, the monastics teach and offer freely the Buddhist teachings and serve as examples of those engaged in spiritual life. There are 3 degrees of giving. The first is tentative or one-handed giving. And this is where we give because people ask us to give. You are pressured into it. People give reluctantly, for example, giving to a beggar to get rid of them. This kind of giving is really limited in value because there's no letting go in the true spirit of giving. The second degree of giving is known as friendly giving. And that's where we give because it feels good. You don't have to be pressured into it and are not tightly holding on. So an example is where you have 2 bananas. Someone is hungry, so you give them one. And my own personal example was when I was at Union Square and a homeless man approached me while I was eating my bag lunch. He expressed that he was very hungry, so I actually just gave him my entire lunch. The third is known as kingly giving, and that's where you give anything at any time. You give the shirt off of your back. Here there is no holding on and no thought of I involved in the giving. It's a reflective act of generosity, kindness, and respect. Examples of what we can give in our practice of dana in daily life is number 1, material things. And that's really the easiest form of giving, especially if you have more than enough. The second is giving food and or money to charity. I personally donate 10% of the sales of my art to the Insight Prison Project and or to my spiritual teacher. The third is time, which is a much deeper form of giving because our time is really close to our ego. We cling to our precious time and desire only to do what we want. This entails letting go of our desires in order to help someone. Sharing our knowledge and talent with others is another way of letting go. And the last is our own meditation practice. During the sitting, we are giving up whatever is coming through our senses in mindfulness meditation. So as we watch and observe our mind getting caught up in a fantasy, for example, we then decide to choose the breath over staying in the fantasy. And this is a form of generosity because we're giving ourselves the gift of mindfulness practice. And then we can also choose in our sitting meditation to focus on the body sensations versus getting caught up in any story that we create about somebody or a certain situation that comes to our mind during the sitting. Another form of generosity is to bring nuts and oranges in the car and offer these to homeless people near the tunnel coming into Alameda, which is where I live. Sometimes the homeless people get angry because they actually want money, but they still take the food. Some have refused the food. I don't feel bad because if they get really triggered with anger, since I don't offer them money, they may remember down the road of their lives that someone was kind enough to think of the state of their health and offered food instead of money, which they might otherwise use to buy drugs or cigarettes. In our culture, which does not teach generosity to our children or practice it in our society in an expansive way, it's also important to learn how to receive gifts and or acts of generosity graciously and with gratitude. It's important to receive without the burden of worrying that the gift must be paid back somehow, but just to freely accept what is offered without resistance or contention. So this is part of the practice of generosity, is knowing how to receive graciously. Buddha has a teaching known as the simile of the raft. A man made a raft to cross the river. Once he gets to the other side, he must not carry the raft with him throughout his journey, but instead leave it and continue on without it. So we can contemplate, what rafts are we dragging around? How can we let go of them? What can we give to others? How can we be of service to the world? When people are on their deathbeds, they do not have regrets about what they have given to others during their lives, but instead regret how they have held back their love and presence, the truth, money, and possessions. People who are dying do not usually complain that they didn't make enough money or work enough. Life is not about what we receive or acquire, but what we give to ourselves, others, and the world. Buddha emphasized the joy of giving. Dana should not be done reluctantly or with a sense of obligation, but rather the giver should be delighted before, during, and after giving. Thank you.